Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Um, Actually, kind of excited, and that's a weird thing to say given that I am not a professional speaker, and grief isn't necessarily the happiest of topics. So, why am I excited? It's because I really, really believe in the value of this work. I've seen it in action time and time again bring peace and solace, comfort, new insights to people and it allows them to then be able to put one foot in front of the other. Let's see, I think this is going to forward my slides. Yes. So this is the flyer. You may have seen it. There are copies of it on the back table where the candles are lit on our little community art table. Feel free to take one with you. Give it to friends if you like who might also be interested. It talks about how we're kicking off a 4-week series with this conversation today. It's going to be Wednesday evenings from 6:30 to 8:30 right here in this room. And I invite you to also, while you're over at that table, scribble and mark. Pick a color. What color is your joy? What color is your grief? Just add to our community collaborative masterpiece, if you will, if you feel like it. I don't know everybody here, so introducing myself, I'm Nicola Davies. My husband, Scott, is sitting over there, and our son, Caden, who's... Scott and our son, Caden, who's 17, and I have been here at Epiphany for about 15 years. One thing that I can tell you about me right off the bat is this is sort of my philosophy, is that life is creativity in progress. I have a leadership coaching practice in an art studio in Edmonds called Create Next Steps. And as a coach, I help people navigate both personal and professional transitions. Life and executive leadership coaching means that I work with individuals and with small teams, and I have sort of a particular spot in my heart for working with nonprofits. My background, I have a very winding career path that has led me to this work, starting with being an attorney, few stops in nonprofit management in the middle, an artist. I use both sides of my brain. We're going to talk about both sides of the brain in a minute. But all this brings me to the work that I do today. I help people navigate change in their lives, and we use both analytical thought and creative expression. Using the creative expression tool, I have been facilitating for several years with Fred Hutch and Cancer Lifeline. A lot of grief comes into those conversations, both with patients, caregivers, and staff. And the reason I combine coaching and art is because both really offer the gift of seeing differently, kind of finding a new perspective, if you will. So let's take a second and just settle into what is grief. I'm going to read a poem, it's short, by Mark Nepo called Adrift. Everything is beautiful, and I am so sad. This is how the heart makes a duet of wonder and grief. The light spraying through the lace of the fern is as delicate as the fibers of memory forming their web around the knot in my throat. The breeze makes the birds move from branch to branch as this ache makes me look for those I've lost in the next room, in the next song, in the laugh of the next stranger. In the very center of it all, what we have that no one can take away and all that we've lost face each other. It is there that I'm adrift, feeling punctured by a holiness that exists inside everything. I am so sad, and everything is beautiful. So clearly, life asks us to hold joy and sorrow at the same time. It's not always easy. Things are moving fast. It's a human experience. And technology and AI is not going to help us with this part. Here's where we're going to go today. I'm going to give you just a little bit of a context Kate already did about what we're defining as grief today. Not just the death of a loved one. We do suffer losses throughout our lives in a variety of different ways, and it hits us differently. I'm going to give you the definition of art for our purposes in this workshop series. We're going to talk a little bit about the benefits of doing creative expression as a way of navigating your grief. And then how do you get started if you've never done this before, and what to expect in the next 4 weeks. So I have tried really hard to keep this to 45 minutes, but it's an hour and a half of material. No, I could talk for an hour and a half because I get excited about it. But we're going to stick to our timeline. But if you will hold questions, comments, inquiries until the end, I'm going to allow time for that then. Healing begins with giving ourselves compassion. So our lives they're hectic, they're fast-paced, we're information and productivity driven. And the first thing we need to do is slow down. We have a tendency to rush through everything, including grief. In fact, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to rush through the grief process. And it simply doesn't work that way. So the first step is slow down. So let's just do that now. Take a deep breath. Maybe close your eyes or soften your gaze. You're here. Feel the seat underneath you. Listen as you begin to take deep breaths in and out. Slowing down your busy mind. Turning down the chitter-chatter and the critique. And I invite you to set an intention. Why are you here today? Is it to learn something new? Is it to gather with people on a similar journey? Think about just your own personal meaning to being here together with us. And then we'll walk through a few slides. So we'll start with what is grief. We all experience it. In a word, it's complicated. Love and grief are both complicated. There's a lot of research in years past. There was a lot of conversation around the 5 stages of grief. Some people have revised it to be the 6 stages or the 7. Some people talked about the 3 C's of grief. But all of that conversation around the stages of grief, there's not a stage called closure. It's a winding path that continues. And along the way, people keep asking us, how are you doing? If they know that we're grieving about something or someone. And it's really hard to answer that question sometimes. Do you make something up? Do you put on a happy face because that's going to make the other person feel more comfortable? Is it just too lengthy to get into when you know they're just saying a hi, how are you, and moving on? Or you just might not have words. If you're acutely grieving now or have ever experienced loss, part of your life that came to an end, you're viscerally aware that grief can really break us open. Powerful emotions come to the surface and make us feel really raw and vulnerable. When we're broken open in that way, we exist in a place that often is really beyond words. Can't tell you how I'm feeling. Can't tell you how I'm doing. When you get to this place, creating visual art can be a light in the darkness, which is why we're offering this series. So what is art? Today, what we're talking about as art is that it's hands-on creativity. Nothing on a computer, hands-on. We're also defining art as, and looking at both sides of what it really is. Art is process as well as product. So it's not the finished masterpiece that is the only value to this. In fact, there may be, in this emphasis, more value to walking through the process of creating and expressing what needs to be brought to the surface. It'll be really personal. You'll have some unique symbolism in the work, and as long as it's meaningful to you, then it is great art. So we're not trying to create fine art. There is no goal to hang your pieces in the Seattle Art Museum. We're not competing with the St. John's Bible. That's just not an option. Here's what art is. It's a conversation. It's a conversation that we have with ourselves primarily in this instance, and then perhaps with others if we share it. As Georgia O'Keeffe said, I found I could say things with colors and shapes that I couldn't say any other way, things I just had no words for. No words. Tens of thousands of years we've been using imagery to communicate our perspectives and our place in the world. Cave paintings, archaeologists found some beautiful artifacts that just tell us that mark making was a form of communication long before language emerged. COVID, we used chalk on the sidewalks to connect with each other because we couldn't walk on the same side of the street. So we left a message for someone, maybe a message for hope. Hang in there, we're in this together. Today, we use a lot of other images to communicate without needing words. We rely on them actually quite a bit. So in this process, we're talking about visual arts. There are other expressive arts, dance, music, poetry, etc. But we're going to work with visual arts, paint, drawing, maybe clay and sculpture, doodle, collage, mosaic, photography, but definitely creating with your hands. So yes, I've been asked before in this conversation, does gardening count? Yes, gardening can count. Put some intentionality behind it, and it absolutely will have similar benefits. The working with your hands piece is really interesting to me with all the studies that have been done around the fact that if you're in a class and you take your notes handwritten, you are far more likely to remember the material without even studying it than if you type them. Knowing that, I won't offer my opinion on the fact that schools don't teach handwriting very often anymore. So I'm going to walk you through some examples because what I've just told you is that this is a very visual process. That saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words, what does it even mean? It means that a single image, or maybe even just a mark, can often communicate a complex area of ideas, a complex story, and it can do so more effectively than a longer verbal conversation. So I'm going to give you some visuals with grief and creative expression that people have done in this work. And I invite you, as we walk through the next several slides, to just pause and think about your own grief. What are you experiencing? What have you experienced? What have you noticed? What might you notice if you look at it through this lens? What color is your grief? Maybe it's a combination of colors. What shape is your grief? Is it identifiable or abstract? What's your relationship with grief? Do you try to run away from it? Does it pull you back, despite your best efforts? Or do you face it head on? You're determined, you can tackle anything. You can see and feel the energy in this piece. So it's also an example, you do not have to create happy-looking art. This is about making it real. And in fact, this particular piece is just one part of a huge piece that someone worked on just came to it as a place of solace for quite some time and adding something to it each time they needed to. Do you try and stuff your grief into a box? Put it on the shelf for later? Maybe you feel like your life is taking a new path, completely different from the one you had envisioned. Oops, there's the new path. Maybe you feel torn in two. There's the person you were before and the person you are today. Does grief permeate all aspects of your life? Do you try and keep it separate and compartmentalized? What size is your grief? One thing is for sure, everyone moves in their own direction when they're navigating grief. It also sometimes can leave you, unfortunately, turning away from others if you're not careful. Where are you in your grief journey? Are you at the beginning? Are you feeling it will never end, lingering forever? Dwight always talks about wherever you are in your spiritual journey, you have a place at Epiphany. I'm going to say, so it goes with this work. Wherever you are in your grief journey, you have a place in these workshops for the next 4 weeks. So why are we doing this? What are the benefits? There are vast physical and emotional benefits to this work. I could go on for an hour on just this, but I'm going to highlight several of them in just a short sort of summary. Creating yourself expressively through the arts using your hands, it lowers cortisol levels and your heart rate. Your blood pressure goes down, calms the nervous system. Patients often report they've had a decreased perception of pain. An increase in serotonin helps you fight depression. Overall, reducing stress and anxiety, providing a greater overall sense of health and well-being. It can also be a form of meditation or mindfulness, perhaps a form of prayer that offers healing and a sense of grounding. Allows us to process a wide range of emotions that we might not have an outlet for otherwise. Then we're able to regulate fear, sadness, confusion, frustration and anger, excitement, anticipation, humor, joy and love. And this work allows us to find meaning along the way, making meaning of the journey itself, honoring memories, and forming a connection with ourselves, with where we've been, with where we're going, within a community, and something greater than yourself. Using this as a tool can help you imagine a more hopeful future. So for centuries, artists and scientists have known that creating art is inherently therapeutic. Now we have modern neuroscientific research that backs it up. There's really clear evidence confirming the physiological and emotional benefits of engaging in a hands-on creative process. We could definitely spend an entire day on Neuroscience 101, but we're not going to. What I want you to know is this: the brain is a highly complex organ. There's a lot we know, and there's a lot that we don't. You probably have heard talk about the right brain, left brain. We use both most of the time. Telling our story activates the language portion of the left brain, and art activates the creative centers of your right brain. If you're using both, it allows you to process emotions in a way that can't happen through talking alone. That's because we interpret meaning quicker when we're looking at images than we do with words. The brain just is a faster processor. Using our right brain also is important because it allows us to bypass our defenses and really get to the root of what we're experiencing. And sometimes it takes over the whole brain. That's our experience. So to get through this, we use our whole brain. We use both sides. So some of you are maybe familiar with this and the benefits and the value. Maybe not. So how do you begin? How do you get started? These are the 3 most common barriers and obstacles. Oh, I'm not an artist. I can't draw. I can't do that. My 3rd grade teacher said, "You are really terrible at this." Okay, no skills required, no experience required. As I said, we're not trying to create something that's going in the Seattle Art Museum. And in fact, I will tell you that my experience has been that when people who are accomplished artists in their vocation or in their lives or professionally do this work and come to it, they have a hard time sometimes letting go of all those rules that they adhere to of composition and color theory. So when I nudge them out of that space, it gets a little uncomfortable. So if you're not an artist, absolutely great. Maybe it's even an advantage. We're talking about process, not product. So same thing, again, what are you experiencing and what insights are you finding as you do this? Not, is your final product going to be a showpiece? It requires trusting the process. There are a lot of interesting patterns and connections that will emerge. There aren't any mistakes. There might be some fortuitous accidents. I had one woman who was creating a collage to reflect on her life and had recently received a really critical health diagnosis. She'd just undergone a traumatic event. She took this collage, she worked on it for hour and a half, really focused, determined. She was putting a lot of thought and emotion into it. And then she spilled the paint. The word she had picked out of a magazine and cut it out at the top of her collage when she thought about the trauma had started with the word emergency. The paint spilled, and it left the word emerge. She couldn't believe it and really realized it was meant to happen that way, and then something shifted. Supplies, you don't need fancy supplies. You don't need an elaborate art studio to get started. I'm going to show you that in the next 4 weeks. You can buy all kinds of expensive supplies, but you can do this with things you probably already have at home or can easily get at the dollar store. I don't have time. Oh, I can't start taking on an art thing. So this work, you can spend several hours absorbed, losing track of time, and really find yourself in a wonderful place there, or you can get the benefits even with just a few minutes. There's still therapeutic value. So when I'm talking to people about starting a regular creative practice for themselves as part of their self-care, if you will, an art journal or a creative practice, you can get the benefits from this in 15 minutes a day. So it's up to you what you invest in terms of time. It's really about reflecting. You need to keep curiosity over judgment and remain open. not to critique either the artwork or your emotions. They're there for a reason. Stay curious and remember that it's the process and the product, and just observe. No skills required. And I really mean that. If you can close your eyes and scribble, you'll be fine. So it's about letting the process, the creative process, guide you. 3 keys are staying curious, as I mentioned, trusting yourself and the process, and honesty. This is art to yourself. It's private. It might be very vulnerable. You don't need to show anyone else. If you choose to share it with someone, it doesn't have to look like anything specific to them. They don't have to like it. It doesn't even have to mean anything, as long as it's meaningful to you. So, simple marks, color choices, choose them quickly. Sometimes you're not sure why you even chose that color. And later you look down and you look at it again and you go, oh my gosh, that's recognizable to me. I know what that means. It's really go with the flow. Follow your instincts. See where it leads you. There is some intentionality in the projects that we use for this. Materials. Mosaic allows you to reassemble broken pieces into something new. Collage reminds us that there are multiple layers to our story. Lots of symbolism. There are traditional symbols, universal meanings for colors and shapes and marks and symbols, but you're also going to use your own. It'll become really personal. So, black and white. You might think some people sort of look at those in such contrast and in a certain way, and you might make an assumption. White, perhaps you assume means light or bright and hopeful. It also, to someone else, might be overwhelming. It might represent an emptiness or a void. If you have a quick little gesture drawing a rose, for one person, it might represent new life and beauty, a sense of hope. But if my mother had a rose garden and I'm really missing her today, I'll experience the image of that rose really differently. So you'll create your own meaning in this. You'll customize your story and using your own cultural and personal context. This is a piece that was done several years ago by a young adult after there was a shooting in the Marysville High School. I had the privilege of working with an organization called Art with Heart, and we partnered with the YWCA in Marysville and offered a 14-week series in art and creative expression for these young people to process their grief. I'm not going to share any more right now. This image is about personal symbolism and a reminder that sometimes when we're grieving one thing, we're surprised to find that other previous losses bubble up. So this is a really special story, but I'm going to save it till Wednesday. So what can you expect if you come on Wednesday or any of the following Wednesdays? It's a series. There is an arc in the curriculum and the projects each week with a continuity and building one week from the next, but each week also stands alone. So attend as many as you can. All of them are encouraged, but you're not required. So if you miss one, just come back the next week. While it's not technically a support group, you'll find support. While it's not therapy in the clinical sense, it is therapeutic. And while we're not there for it to be a social hour, you will find yourself in community. We're going to meet from 6:30 to 8:30. It's like a class, so it's not drop-in, open house style, come anytime you want. Plan to be there for the whole 2 hours. Our format is going to stay the same each of the 4 weeks. We'll have an opening. We'll do something that's a creative invitation. It might be a poem. It might be a song. There might be a visualization to provide you some inspiration. Then there'll be a really short, simple activity just to kind of get you to loosen your creative muscles and get your wheels turning, shutting off the previous part of the day and centering yourself. It might be a quick journal prompt or a simple creative exercise. And then we'll really launch into the main art project for that week, which will have a theme. You'll be given quite a bit of time to work quietly on your own with the materials that we've provided, and then at the end, we will have a little time to reconnect again as a group and answer questions, maybe do a little bit of sharing, and the sharing, of course, is completely optional. So our topics over the 4 weeks, this week we'll start on Wednesday, and we'll be looking at emotions. Second week, we'll be on balance, rebuilding balance. Third week, our theme will be finding your voice, telling your story. And the fourth week, transformation and meaning. How do you take this and how do you move forward? So each week, we're going to use different types of art supplies. It is definitely a mixed media experience. We might have pastels, pens, markers, tissue paper, paint. But here's what you'll find. When you can't look on the bright side, I will walk with you in the dark. A creative practice can really become a trusted companion. So I suggest we take inspiration from one of the greats, Vincent van Gogh. Our inspiration isn't we're trying to compete with his artwork, but we can look at the essence of what we do. I'm seeking, I'm striving, I am in it with all my heart, he said. This quote really complements the work that we're doing. It's the spirit of seeking and expressing life today, something transcendent, personal truth, a universal connection, or a celebration of the soul's journey. So whatever you do, if you're open and honest with yourself in what you need at the time, it works like this. I am expressing and discovering and creating art my way. So if you've previously utilized art and creative expression as a coping skill, or you're new to the idea, either way, I hope you'll consider it now. Please register. You can bring other people. Just let us know the number of people that will be attending so that we can plan in terms of quantity of art supplies and how to set up the tables each week. And we'll get through this together. So I don't know if there are questions about the series or what we're going to do. Yes, you have a question?
Nicola, thanks for sharing your gifts with all of us. I came to hear this session this morning not thinking I would be able to attend the four experiences, but it looks like I can, and I'm looking forward to it. And I felt my brain going to a specific place about what I would create that first week. I know maybe others are starting to think about that already. Would you suggest we try to back away from that?
I would suggest you put that completely out of your mind. Because whatever time and energy you have put into that, it's going to get tossed aside when we start on Wednesday. You need to come with no ideas of what you want to create. I'll guide you through the process, and you'll be set up for success. Don't worry. Yeah, definitely don't. Good question, though. Other questions? Yeah.
Is this a program that you could find in other parts of the country?
Yeah, and it's growing in prominence in being used in hospitals, in after-school programs, Yeah, you can find it many, many places.
Just have a friend in the East, I think, who would love this.
Yeah,
Maybe I'll check it with you.
yeah, we can talk about it in the back.
You mentioned community. Will we be grouped with the same individuals at each session?
Not necessarily. We'll have the tables set up with plenty of space for everyone to work at wherever they sort of feel like in that given week. Some people will sit down with the same people intentionally every time. Other people might choose to just sit with different people. We don't do a whole lot of talking and sharing of our stories in that way. But you do feel the energy and have a connection, and certainly some things get shared verbally with the people at your table, but there's no assigned seating if that's what you're wondering about. Yeah, it'll be fluid.
I just want to commend you. In my past life, I've been an oncology nurse, and we didn't really have classes that we could learn or just know a little bit more about the process.
Well, that's, I'm grateful that society's opening up to it more and that there will be more and more of this offered.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's essential. I think there was a question. Yeah, Robin?
Writing is a form of art, and it's also putting words on the page. How does that fit into this?
Okay, I'm glad you asked because I meant to mention that. It is definitely a very valuable, powerful form of creative expression for people. Not everyone is a writer. I know you write some amazing poetry and prayers, and that is a really great tool. We won't use writing a lot in this class. We will be focusing much more on visual arts. I'm not teaching poetry, but it might be the way that you want to express yourself, and that's totally fine. I'll be giving you a project and a theme, and you can use the materials for whatever you feel inspired to do that week. Really, the only writing that we're going to do that is structured is a little bit of journal writing. I'm going to give you a way to enter into the process through a couple of easy journal prompts. And really invite you to do that without thinking too much. We'll talk more about how to do it, but it's, again, going to be more of an intuitive sort of stream of consciousness kind of writing, nothing that needs to be edited or published. So, but you're welcome to come and use your gifts in writing skills during the time that we're here or incorporate it into whatever we're creating. Absolutely. Other questions? I have another invitation for you. On that back table, as I said, there's a few little art supplies. Would love it if you would just take a minute, be intentional, make a mark, pick a color. It's a nice way of collaboratively starting this process. And thanks for the opportunity.